let's take a look at what's on the agenda for Congress this week, including some major confirmation hearings. We'll also preview the race to fill the late Senator Lindsey Graham's seat, with primaries set for next month in South Carolina. For more on both, Daily Mail political reporter Victoria Churchill joins us now. Victoria, good morning to you. Thank you for coming on. Let's begin with one of those confirmation hearings, and that's for Blanche for AG.
So much for having me on this morning. So we're looking at a couple of critical confirmation hearings on Capitol Hill this week, or confirmation votes actually, because two individuals, of course, Todd Blanche Attorney General, who's been in the department but as deputy, that was a critical one. That could potentially be held up if a couple of Republicans don't vote to either vote him out of committee or vote for him on the floor. A couple of those key votes that we're looking at are, in particular, Senator John Cornyn from Texas. He, of course, is somebody who President Trump backed an opponent of his in the primary, so Cornyn will not be coming back next year as a U.S. Senator. And, you know, we've seen a couple of these members of the U.S. Senate that President Trump endorsed against in their primary fights come back and, you know, work to stall his agenda or work to stall the confirmations that he is pushing forward. So that Blanche vote, definitely very critical. He had some criticisms that were voiced in committee, particularly over his handling and involvement in the Epstein files release and how that was handled by the Department of Justice. So we'll see if he makes that through the floor vote. Or, you know, first the committee vote and then the floor vote. And then the second actually, interestingly, ended up being tied to the Epstein files partially as well. That's Jay Clayton. He is President Trump's nominee for the the division of the Director of National Intelligence. And that is a very critical role, particularly now as we have not seen the reauthorization of FISA, because Democrats didn't want to work to re-up that Bill Pulte, with Bill Pulte serving as acting director. Clayton will probably get confirmed, but it was interesting just seeing yesterday, of course, from this region, we have Senator Mark Warner. He's the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he first had been pushing for a very swift confirmation process, and he said that after that hearing, which I sat in on last week, that he personally would actually not be voting to confirm Clayton. So I thought that was an interesting change of tone, particularly from Senator Warner, you know, representing so many here in the D.C. area. But Clayton is most likely to get confirmed, you know, despite some of that Democrat pushback that he saw in the committee.
Well, Victoria, lastly here, we have about a minute. The run and the race now for former and late Senator Lindsey Graham's seat in South Carolina.
Absolutely. So we are looking at a primary date of August 11th for that seat. Now, you know, President Trump has indicated that he wants the late senator's sister, Darlene, who has now taken his seat as, at least for now, the interim replacement. President Trump has shown that he wants her to fill that seat potentially permanently if she were to run. We've also had some interest, particularly from Congressman Ralph Norman. He is somebody that currently represents South Carolina in the U.S. House of Representatives. He ran for governor unsuccessfully in that primary. And so, you know, he could, of course, be an interesting one because Republicans don't want to give up or give any way for Democrats to run in those House seats in South Carolina. So, for example, when we look at Norman compared to Congressman Russell Fry, who has now re-won a primary election to seek that seat in November, to seek his House seat in November, that could potentially create a problematic vacancy if he were to leave that House seat where he's already won the primary to then run in the Senate election. And, you know, we would also potentially see a runoff in that seat as well. So lots of interesting things to watch on Capitol Hill and, you know, people that revolve in and around the Capitol and could potentially be here next year as well.
Yeah, a lot to watch, and that seat in South Carolina is certainly highly sought after and monitored. So we'll be sure to look ahead to August 11th to see what happens ultimately. Victoria, thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of Daily Mail and for all of your reporting, we appreciate it.
Thanks so much.